The sound you can hear in the background is water being dropped from a weir along the canal. I'm in the centre of Leeds in the north of England. Yeah, I don't usually go for a photo walk in the centre of a city. And today's not too different actually, because even though I'm in a city, I'm going to follow the trail of what's called the Trans-Pennine Way. I can't walk the whole thing. We wouldn't have the time. But I'm starting in the city centre by a place called the Armoury and the docks, the dock area, which of course now is not a dock area anymore. It's a fancy collection of nice-looking apartments. Oh, and by the way, while I remember, if ever you hear, particularly in the UK, a comedian called Lucy Porter in her act doing a piece about wheeling her mother's ashes around IKEA in Enfield in London, I'd just like it to go on record that I gave her that gag, because that's something that really happened to me. But she seemed to like it, and I saw the look in a comedian's eyes of, I'll have that one, thanks very much. If ever I get a chance, maybe I'll do it today to tell you the story about my mother's ashes and taking her to IKEA. Then, well, just remind me, I must tell you. Right, Trans-Pennine Trail today. And also, of course, back for part 2 of a special guest, Edmund Terakopian.
Today on the Photowalk.
I never want photography to become a job for me, as in a 9-to-5 job. I've seen colleagues who are 9-to-5 photographers. If it's, 10 minutes past 5 o'clock when they've put their cameras in their bag and Big Ben topples out of St. Elizabeth's Tower and bounces across the river, they wouldn't take a picture of it.
Edmund Terakopian is our guest for the concluding part of his appearance on the New Look Photowalk show of a Friday. It's the show that's just you and me together with our cameras taking a walk wherever we are in the world. Me with my microphone and mailbag too, that you've been fantastically generous with sending in your thoughts about making photographs and pictures too that we feature on the show page. We're brought to you by mpb.com, the world's largest online platform for used photography and videography equipment, who have just unveiled the 5 legendary pieces of kit that have won the public vote to be crowned the Photo and Video Kit Hall of Fame Class of 2021. There are 5 winners. Do you have any of this kit? Classic inductee, the Canon EOS 5D Mark III, one of the cameras I have. Game Changer inductee, DJI Mavic 2 Pro, a drone I have. Iconic inductee, the Hasselblad 501C, which I sadly don't have. Road-tested inductee, the Nikon D850, depending upon where you are in the world, and the trendsetter inductee, the Sony A7 III. We'll link, of course, to the results, and you can read for yourself why and how the list was decided. Today on the Photowalk, then, a patron of the day has shared a virtual exhibition that's linked to in the famous show notes. I know you will love, and you'll love the exhibition too. The pros and cons of COVID lockdown for photographers, why mums make such great photographers, being in the creative desert and what we can do about it, shooting better portraits and why you can make more time for shooting portraits, Scottish wonder landscapes, recording sounds to go with your still pictures, and taking my late mother to IKEA, a true story. And before we walk this week, a big thank you to USBMemoryDirect.com, who've also shown some faith and want to help in our Photography Daily community to make these shows, so thank you. They specialise in creating custom USB flash drives, 50 styles of them, various shapes, sizes, materials, all able to be customised with your logo. But Neil, why not just let people download their images from a shoot? Well, professional photography sessions carry a professional fee. So being able to receive a physical product of some sort is important in this otherwise, world of ones and zeros. You add some value and you add your branding to the USBs and optionally the packaging, and you've created this valuable promotional product for your client to keep for years to come. Physical keepsakes, professional too, and for our listeners in the US and Canada, use the code FLASH15 to receive 15% off your first order of custom flash drives. Go to USBMemoryDirect.com, USBMemoryDirect.com. We'll leave a link on the show notes, of course, as always, and you can request a quote through them. Right, cameras charged, check. Lens caps off, Check. Boots on? Yes. Let's walk for this week's Photowalk show together in metropolitan, urban and countryside Leeds, all in one.
Just because we're not locked down at the moment in the UK, it's all too easy to forget that there are many photographers right now finding it much harder to get outdoors again, to go as far as they would like to make their pictures, as usual. And I'm starting actually with Christine Wilson this week, who I'm making our patron of the day, all at the same time, because she has a story to share about this, and also an app to share that you may or may not be a user of. You may not even know about it. So, Christine Wilson, hello Neil, hope this finds you well. I wrote in last year with a story about my father being the Cadbury travelling salesperson. How could I forget that? Best job in the world, huh? Being a salesperson, or salesman as she actually calls him, for Cadbury. My grandfather, I've talked about Grandad, haven't I? Grandad Chocolate, owned a tobacconist and confectioners on the famous A10 in Enfield in London. And there were a handful of times when I was in that shop when the salesman from Fry's Chocolate would come, and he'd bring a briefcase full of wonderful goodies. I loved Fry's Chocolate. Did he still make Fry's Chocolate? So he'd turn up with this case of Fry's, and I'd sit there diligently out back with Grandad in the storeroom, chomping on the bars of chocolate, but the salesperson at Grandad would just raid the tobacco store. Anyway, Christine says, I think that was about episode 146. You're very good, Christine, was it? I haven't checked. There's a platform which I like, which I'd like to share, says Christine. I post to it every now and then. Stellar.co, Steller, Stellar.co. Now, I did know of this. I have heard of this, but I haven't really been a user, so I looked it up. Stellar, Steller. You can tell I'm more in the city now, can't you? There we go. I'm heading I thought I'd be heading out into the countryside, but I seem to be heading in to the city. But I'm still on the route. I'm still following the Leeds and Liverpool canal, just to my left here. So yes, I looked up Stellar, and I've never really been a user of it. But it's all about, well, it says discover your next adventure. The app says the ultimate in travel-inspired storytelling, where you can discover and share incredible experiences from the world's coolest places. And that's exactly what I found. You can download for Android or Apple, and it's a platform that's a literal tour guide of where you can travel in the world, stuff that you can see, things that you can experience, and I'll include Christine's link. And Christine says it's more about stories. And it is. Absolutely love your black and white coastal collections in there, Christine. It's obviously something that the coast is obviously somewhere you love being, and it's something that you clearly love photographing. So I downloaded the app, since I haven't really used it before, and I started to think it might be a good place to put my own Photowalk pictures. Though I work landscape, and this app really is more about portrait orientation, but it is well worth a visit. I'll include a link to your Insta on the show page today as well. I must say, for me, I found the app just a little confusing. It's very targeted. It's niche. It knows what it wants to be. It's all about travel and adventures, but navigating your way around it, I just don't think it's the clearest app. But look, I haven't given it much of a chance, and I think you should go and take a look for yourself. And Christine says, your podcasts and guests on the show have continued to inspire me, which is something that I've needed since we've been in and out of lockdown, and currently in lockdown with only a 5k radius. So Christine lives in Australia, in Melbourne. This is lockdown number 6, and by the time this goes out, I don't know, possibly lockdown number 7. You seem to be going through more lockdowns than certainly than we experienced, that's for sure. We've had a curfew imposed on us tonight from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning, and 22 new local cases here, and we've been locked down so damn hard I can hardly breathe. As a consequence, I've taken a lot of photographs of my local area, and have a folder full of shots to work on. A real challenge for me, predominantly a landscape photographer, not to be jumping in the car and heading out to the countryside or the coast. However, recently I've been a part of a virtual street photography exhibition, SITHOM, which stands for Shot in the Heart of Melbourne. Started 10 years ago by myself and 5 others. I'll leave a link for this too as it closes soon. And it does actually, it closes on the 7th of September. Some of my lockdown photos are included. These are shots more or less within 5k of my house. Some are recent and some are over the last 12 months. See, fortunately you have managed to pop out and get a few pictures during these awful lockdowns. I've popped, Christine, 6 of my favourite of yours on the show page. And what a great, by the way, great virtual exhibition app. I've been going to a few virtual exhibitions, and obviously the power of the real one can't be understated. It's wonderful, isn't it, to be around people looking at artwork or looking at photographs on a wall and appreciating exhibitions. But your virtual exhibition, the one that you've appeared in, is fantastic. So yes, I will leave a link. The exhibition's only on until as I say, the 7th of September. So you really haven't got too long to go and see it now. And actually, a friend of mine, Alistair, has recently emigrated to in the last week emigrated to Australia, and he had to talking about isolation. He had to isolate himself and his family for a week and a half, 2 weeks prior to going to Australia in the Premier Inn at Heathrow Airport. And then he flew out to Darwin. He's got to isolate himself for a further, I don't know, is it 14 days out in Australia? And then that's in Darwin. Then he flies down to Melbourne, where I guess he has to isolate again for a little while. So it'd be fair to say that he's spent, he would have spent well over a month actually just isolating. But he'll be your neighbour. You must look him up, Christine. Alistair Freeman, very good wedding photographer, extremely good marketeer. Now in your neck of the woods. One of the wonderful things about this regeneration that's going on in Leeds is everywhere there's a bit of old industrial that's being turned into something new. I guess this building would have been part of the docks or something. I can hear the workers inside it. Let me try and get a picture. Sun's coming out. It's quite contrasty, actually. F8. Oh, even that's too bright. On goes the neutral density filter. I'm using my X100V. There we go. Just the side of... it's a wonderful old Victorian building. I'm assuming this would have been part of the docks once upon a time. There we go. See what you make of that. So, we're in a country that where lockdown is not really our current reality. You forget a little just for a moment what it was like, though. It's like when a new parent asks you if you remember all those nights at 3 a.m. in the morning when your little ones were crying. You say, no, I don't really remember that. Was that a thing? But I'm loath to say that lockdown is positive in any way, shape or form. But positive things did come during our one, I remember. For instance, in episode 91, I chatted with Carolyn Mendelsohn, a photographer who'd organised virtual photographic mentoring for young people in her town in the north of England so that they could take part in something called Through Our Lens, a self-isolation project. Here's an example of what she was able to do and the group that she brought together during that particular time. And thank you, Christine. Lovely to hear from you, as always.
In the session, I would do the workshop and then I would go through their work, a selection of their work. And I would get them to talk about their pictures as well, and also for them to comment. You know, I think one of the iconic images of that project is a photograph by Harry Berry where they are curled up, surrounded by books, and it's taken from
it's taken from the ceiling almost.
Oh, it's amazing. And I said to Harry, how on earth did you take that picture? Harry said, well, I got my phone. I actually Harry had a fisheye lens, so that was quite good. And I stuck it on some lights and I put it on self-timer. And then I set up my scene and I curled up and I pressed it. It fell on my face a few times. And, I just thought this is so inventive. And for some people, they've seen it as almost like a definitive lockdown picture.
Carolyn Mendelsohn. She's an incredible portrait photographer. I'll leave a link to Carolyn's website, and I want to talk about portraits in a moment, actually, or making better ones, or at least being able to deal with tricky customers or sitters. The great thing about, I know I've said this before, I might be a repeat of myself today, Neil, surely not, is that wherever you look, there are sort of signs of the history of the docking here in Leeds. They've left, and I'm pleased they have, sort of, I don't know, what's this? Is this an old winch? Right, here we go. Shutter speed 100, f6.4, ISO 500. This is kind of what would have been, I think, winches to lift things off barges. There's a lovely sort of peaceful place. I know this is a photo walk, but there's a lovely peaceful part of the canal with a bench looking straight down it. I'm going to take a seat for a couple of moments and have a quick chat with you. A quick word about Photo Swindon, which we're partnering in the UK. It's an outdoor exhibition touring across the town of Swindon, which is in the south of England. Edmund Terakopian last week was extolling the virtues of an exhibition during COVID being outside. And it's unaffected by COVID, really. And one of the problems many photographers have had in this time is, and we've spoken to quite a few, haven't we, where they've said, well, I've got an exhibition. It opened, and 3 days later it closed down. Then it opened again. A week later it closed down. So, yeah, having an outdoor exhibition seems to circumnavigate that. There's one more week of Martin Parr to go as the feature in Photo Swindon, and if you'd like to know news about it, and we're proud to partner it, go to @Photoswindon, which is on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram for news. Behind the scenes pictures and stories and latest stuff for all our audience who don't live in the UK, so you can still see what's going on, see what they've organised there. Here's one from John Clark. I was so happy to find your podcast last month, Neil, and it's now a constant companion in the garden while I do the more pleasurable chores of planting, trimming and weeding. We've just got a pond, actually, John. I know that, and we've I had no idea, by the way, you have to weed a pond. And put this pond in, and I thought, well, there we go, fill it up with water, chuck a couple of oxygenators in, and then leave it. And in a couple of months, obviously, I look forward to frogs and all that kind of stuff. But it turns out that you have to diligently weed and tend to this pond as much as you do your flowers. Where were we anyway? Yeah, and of course, photographing, John says, whatever strikes my fancy. Living only a few minutes from Niagara Falls, the lockdown has given me an opportunity to shoot locations with nobody in sight that are normally crowded with tourists. Oh, John, you're sort of preaching to the choir on this one, because you know me, I like to go for these photo walks and be kind of solitary. It's my quiet time. And of course, it's our quiet time, because you join me on these photo walks. It's us with our cameras. I might have a microphone and a digital mail bag on my clipboard, but otherwise, it's just you and me in the quiet, isn't it? He says, walking along the Trans-Pennine route along the Liverpool and Leeds Canal in the middle of Leeds. Although I'm making my way now further out into the countryside, and I can definitely, it's just you, me, and the joggers now, and a couple of dog walkers here and there. So here's a photo, says John, taken last winter from the brink with a hydroelectric power plant in the background. And beautiful it looks too. I can appreciate it being in industrial Leeds today. John Clark, Fonthill, Ontario, Canada. It's on the show page today. It'll be there for you. Some images today on the show page too, and you must go and see the show page. It's on photographydaily.show. Just look up today's show number, and it's 256, isn't it? Is it 256? I'm pretty sure it's 256. And you'll see all the pictures that we talk about on today's programme. Some images today on the show page too from Andy Thibault. Morning, Neil. My walk this week took me to the Vietnam Veterans Bicentennial Park in Fall River, Massachusetts. One of the new things completed at the park was the wall, which has 58,348 names engraved as soldiers who lost their lives in the war. I think with what's going on right now and some of the comparisons with history being made, this is apt timing, Andy, to include your pictures. Just truly shocking. When you look with scale, we talked about scale on the show last week. When you look with scale in your photographs, exactly how much room 58,348 etched names take to show. It's haunting. It's a haunting tribute. Your pictures on the show page are marvellous. Thank you very much for those, Andy. If you'd like to send an email in with your photographs, I'd be delighted to receive them. Send them to studio@photographydaily.show, studio@photographydaily.show. And if you can remember to send 2,000 pixels wide, please, that would be marvellous. Thank you very much. And of course, send them in for the 365. We'll talk about that later. Here's a mail from Jonathan West. Hello, Neil. Greetings from not-so-sunny Ipswich this summer. I was prompted to write thanks to your mention of Ipswich versus Arsenal in 1978 when our lad Roger Osborne showed underdogs can win. Oh, kick a man when he's down, will you, Jonathan? And for anybody that lives outside the UK thinking Ipswich, Arsenal, what's that about? Two football clubs that met in the late 70s. And it was supposed to be a shoo-in, really, for Arsenal to win that. And they lost to the underdogs. Big match, FA Cup final. Yes, remember it well. I'm a full-time carpenter and restorer, part-time photographer, looking to make more of my photography. My mother was the photographer in our family, much like yours by the sound of it. Yes, she was. Although by what I'm about to say about your mum and my mum, they were two totally different kinds of photographers. My mum with her Kodak Instamatic. Was it Kodak? No, couldn't have been Kodak Instamatic. Was it called Instamatic on the front of the Kodak camera? I'm sure it was Insta something. Anyway, it was a fixed focal length. I guess it would have been something like 35 mil, somewhere in that region. Certainly not 50. But she would take this everywhere we went. She was very good with the camera in terms of using it, lots. But really, composition, we should have had words. But at that stage, I knew nothing about that, so she'd take pictures of the red arrows at the copious amounts of air shows we went to, and she'd say, "Look, there's the red arrows." "No, Mum, they're just dots in the sky. They might as well be flies." "No, it's the red arrows." She knew, and I've still got those photographs in a book somewhere. But your mum sounds totally different. As Jonathan says, she made portraits of all our family constantly, and wonderful self-portraits too. And I joke with my young family now that she was the English East Coast Vivian Maier, though it usually falls on deaf ears. With a "Who's Vivian Maier, Dad?" question. Can I make a request for some more portrait photographers to appear on the show? We'd love to learn more about that craft. Well, you can request, of course you can. It's a very good idea. And yes, I've got some nice plans coming up this winter. Some people that have said, yes, we'd like to be on the show. Some people that you'll know well. So I'm looking forward to speaking with them. That's enough of the tease on that one. But let's have some inspiration from Michel Del Sol. I could listen to Michel for forever. I love a Frenchman in the middle of New York. Here's some, it's a nugget really about it's posing advice. Now, I'm not suggesting that you perhaps need to be quite this harsh, but there are times, yes, when you think, I need to say something to make this work, to make this sitter understand that I haven't got all day. Here's Michel Del Sol.
For years, I would speak very little with the subject. When the subject would come into my studio, I would speak very little with the subject until the moment when we're about to photograph. I would say hello, but then I would let other people handle the other things until the moment of the shooting. Just to keep things fresh, I speak, I laugh, I can even make jokes, although I'm not a comedian, but I can make jokes if I need to. I will never let go until the photograph has not been done. I am stubborn, tenacious, and I had one trick which I had to use once on a very difficult subject, and I only used it once. It was a musician I was photographing for probably Spin magazine, I think, a music magazine, and the person was not giving me anything, nothing at all. And I said, okay, I may have to use my one weapon, which I've never used before in this case. And I told the gentleman, listen, I really don't care. You know, been trying for the last half an hour to get something from you. Obviously, you're not interested. It's not really happening. I said, you know what? I really don't care. The picture's good or not good. I get paid anyway, so it's up to you. If you don't want to give me anything, I'm good with that too. That sentence, which I never wanted to use, when I told the gentleman this, that did it. That broke the ice.
Wow.
When I told him, listen, I really don't care. I get paid anyway, which I really do care.
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
But I tell him, I really don't care. I get paid anyway. So if you don't want to give me anything, okay, that's fine.
Michel Del Sol from episode 121. I'll of course include links, as ever, to all of our shows that we mention, the guests, the inspirational guests that we mention on the show page, along with the pictures that we reference on the programme today. Do you know, wherever you look, he's not going to say it again, is he? No, Neil, don't do it. There's echoes of the past. Oh, he's only gone and done it. It would have been... That would be my superpower, my chosen superpower. I have two strange superpowers. Do you ever play the superpower game? Number one would be to be able to... It's not very useful at the moment, to be able to pack a suitcase. When you're on holiday, just pack the suitcase and sort of teleport it back home so you don't have to worry about carrying great big suitcases. I'm just getting a picture of some more of these, the dock area with the warehousing. So that was number one. So you'd never have to take your suitcase around with you at the airport. So it's a bit of a decadent one, really. It's not. Oh, hang on, bird flying low across the water. Got it. Rubbish picture though. And that's superpower number one. Superpower number two is to be able to teleport anywhere at any time. And it would be fantastic, wouldn't it, to be able to teleport out back into, I don't know, the early 1900s, the late 1800s to photograph, obviously, in black and white, on film, the activities and what was going on in this area. Let's have a little rifle around our wonderful Facebook group, shall we? Kelly Mitchell had a very good question in there, all about being in the creative fug, I can't say that without my voice going odd, fug that descends, or funk, or fog, or other words starting with F that don't require a bleep machine. Anyway, she says, hello all, I have a question, but I'm not sure if I'm going to word it correctly. Everybody has days where you're not 100%. It's life, whether it's mentally or physically. I'm an asthmatic and I went through a very rough time about 10 years ago, but getting out with my camera was what kept me going and also got me more physically active at the same time. Question, when you're out and about shooting, but it's, in inverted commas, one of those days, do you see it in your images? I know it's a bit of a loaded question and there may be no real answer to it, but I thought I'd ask and see. So Andrew Hardacre was straight in there, and the post is obviously still live. So if you have something to add to this, join our amazing Facebook group and obviously join in. Have a chat and see if you can add to this one. It's a wonderful Facebook group. As I've said many times before, it's not full of people that point score. Oh, you don't want to be doing that. You want to do this. Where have you been all your life with your camera? So yeah, no, it's a much more friendly place where you can discuss things like this and get advice from, and Andrew Hardacre in particular, his experience of photography and life. He said, I've been in a creative desert, sadly not desert, he says, for a couple of months. On Tuesday, I went out for a morning with a pal and we shot for 3 hours. The weather was good, the company was good, and suddenly things just turned up. I think it's like that, isn't it? If you go out and you don't stress yourself, don't strain too much to find the picture, then you find things come to you, don't you? Usually that's the way it is for me. I know with a photo walk, if I think, right, I've got to get this photo walk done, and I've got to do it today, and I've taken my camera out, and I need to get some, and it just doesn't work. So now with the photo walks, the whole thing is a much slower process, and if it takes me the whole day to record, which is one of the advantages, of course, of the new format, really, of concentrating on this with one guest within it, then it means I can do so. So I'm going to make another picture. I'll come back to you, Andrew, in a set, or what Andrew said in a moment, but I love this reflection in front of me. It's all reflections today. Oh, Neil, you're a one-trick pony today. Maybe, but allow me a day of reflections. There we go. Oh, what was the ISO? Let me do that again. Shutter speed 100, f6.4, ISO 1000, jogger looking at me in a bizarre way because I seem to be talking to myself as I'm making pictures. Who cares? We're in Leeds. Nobody knows me here. Where were we? Yes, Andrew Hardacre. Yes, the weather was good, the company was good, and suddenly things turned up. I finished with a number of images I was happy with. I think it's like being a sportsman. You go through fallow patches. I can tell if I've been forcing images. It's frustrating, but it will pass. Andrew's absolutely right. So hopefully that helps you, Kelly. And we're talking about the creative fug. See, I can't say that word without my voice going weird. Fug. On tomorrow's Patreon show with a little nugget I recorded at the end of my chat with Edmund Terakopian. It seems he doesn't suffer this, but he has a reason. You'll find out why tomorrow on the More Show. Thank you to our patrons that do support us, and of course each week on a Saturday you get your own show. It's a mixture of diary entries now from stuff and as the world opens up for me, certainly with my photography, I'm able to talk about some of the jobs that I go on and the stuff that I see. So it's become a sort of diary piece, although last week it was an extended part of the Photowalk. And we do a book club. The book club's become a bit less formal now, really more of a mention of books and an idea rather than long reviews where you get a bit frustrated with me and say, but I can't see the pictures, Neil. And interview bits that have been sort of, I suppose, the chats sometimes at the end of, because I keep the tape rolling, old-fashioned language, I know it's digital, but I keep the tape rolling, and sometimes you get little gems and nuggets. And so that's what the More episodes are all about. Here's one from, by the way, while we're talking about the fug, there's something I've started doing at weddings, and I hope my clients aren't listening to this. Oh, they'll understand. There is a moment at each wedding event where, for me, it sort of goes into this very quiet time. You've been working all day, and it's usually the bit between the end of the wedding breakfast and the start of the dancing. It's an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. If you've got Nirvana saying, "Oh, we need to do sound checks for another hour and a half," oh God, it can be 2.5 hours sometimes. It's a long time to be photographing people just drinking tea. So I keep a folder now, and I'm not sure what to call the folder. I've called it downtime at the moment, and it's essentially just it's images of things that I see in the shadows or the light falling. Again, Edmund Terakopian talked about this. Or the light falling on chairs, or just the other day I photographed this huge spider just sat in the window, waiting to pounce on this fly that was just inching its way closer and closer. Just things that you see that usually you'd look at and wouldn't really. But on this occasion, the wouldn't really turns into I wonder if there's a picture in that, and. That's quite good for the creative fug. Glad I remember that. Here's one from Craig Addison. I recently started doing portrait shoots after encouragement from friends and family. I'm great with people and confident in terms of direction and posing, but really struggle with confidence around my images. Does anyone else struggle with the same? And if so, how do you cope? There's some pictures from a shoot that he did in Leamington Spa, which, by the way, were fantastic. They were warm, they were engaging. The family looked like they wanted to be with each other, which is, I know that sounds strange, but honestly, if you've ever photographed families, you'll understand that's 99% of the reason that you might get good photos, that they actually want to be with each other. I'll come back to that. And Chris O'Sullivan answered this. Struggling with confidence, he says, keeps you on your toes. If you're comfortable directing others and get along with clients, then believe your images will please the client if you're 80% happy with them. And David Muse, I think I'm in the opposite boat, confident with my post-processing and pictures, but bad at posing. I think the trick is to keep at it until the confidence goes up. These shots are fantastic, and they were, and you can see them in the wonderful Facebook group that we have. I'll leave a link in the, as always, on the show page today. But I do have some thoughts of my own here, some things that I've personally found making portraits. Keep your images quite clean in terms of processing. Watch you don't go down the overly stylized new fashion of the day. You know, classic black and white, clean, natural color, and that those pictures won't date. Well, they'll date by what you see in terms of fashion and perhaps the cars and things around. But if you're outside doing some more environmental portraiture, but otherwise, no, they'll not date. Particularly with black and white, there is this tendency at the moment, isn't there, to do these very crushed blacks, where you get this kind of I'm not going to call it a fog. It's almost a washed filter, like a watercolor filter across the black and whites. Now look, there's some pictures I see which I think it suits very well, and I think, oh, that's nice, that. But if it becomes your thing, your style, it is going to date you as a photographer, because fashions in post-processing, they come and go, of course. And as we said just a moment ago, everybody being invested is a good thing. I've had experiences, and I'm afraid to say, and I'm ashamed, that it's the dads that usually are the, oh, do we have to be here kind of merchants. And you can feel it in the room. They kind of sap the energy from a portrait session. So often I make sure I engage dad before the children, well, along with the children, because of course winning their trust and confidence is vital. But if you can bring dad in very early on, it makes such a difference to the shoot. It really does. And don't ever let it descend into some kind of treats promise fest. And what I mean by that is, when you get this, oh, we're going to go to McDonald's. You won't go to McDonald's. No Big Mac. It's just, once you're in that moment, it's difficult to draw yourself back. It really is. And do slow down. Don't spook your sitters by being over enthusiastic and rushing around trying to grab every single angle. So calm is the measure of a portrait session, which sounds, I know, a bit strange when you're with kids, because you have to have energy. But if you can mix the two, energy and calm, without sort of looking like, well, frankly, you're sort of rushing around with no plan at all. So yeah, keep calm. I'll tell you who does know how to shoot a fine portrait, though. It's a seamless link, Neil, and that's today's guest, Edmund Terakopian, who is going to be back for part 2. Here's a little tease of what's coming up today.
As photographers, I'm going to say styles change, but I don't mean style in a very conscious way. Nick Turpin, a press photographer colleague from years and years ago, who's now an amazing commercial and street photographer, once said to me, style isn't real if it's something you're conscious of. And I think we had this conversation when I was still a teenager, or early 20s. And it was such a deep thing to think about. And it's so true. If you're conscious about a style, if I have a client that says, we want you to shoot it in this style, I kind of tell them, look, I shoot things the way I shoot things. Yeah. It's a natural way of working. I don't mimic other people. And it's so true.
Edmund Terakopian. I'm going to take you to Scotland in a moment for some wondrous pictures which will feature on the show page today from a very dear friend of the show. Sorry to mention again so quickly, but it is important, and I'm having one of my Columbo just one more thing moments. Tomorrow on The More Show, yes, we'll hear more, as I say, from Edmund, as you just heard there, about how to avoid the so-called creative fug. And I'm going to share my personal thoughts about a couple of things that are on my mind since the Saturday just gone, when I photographed a Hindu wedding. Wonderful, wonderful wedding. Prompted by something that happened at the wedding, when a videographer got, I was going to say a bit irate, but actually no. He got very irate at, about other people making pictures as if it was his territory. And also we'll look at a book in the book club by the extraordinary Paul Strand, an aperture master of photography. And I must mention him because he's truly inspired me for making more portraits at events where I'm at. Because in the book that I'll talk about on the book club part of the More episode tomorrow, Paul Strand, shows images cheek by jowl of his fabulous still life images, which remind me of sort of Edward Weston-like images, which I love. Although they are, of course, Strand pictures. They're Paul Strand pictures, cheek by jowl, with the most wonderful single portraits. Now, I say wonderful, and some of them are. They're beautifully shot. Some of them are real statements of social statements, but some of them are very, very simple, normal, ordinary portraits that aren't necessarily write home about portraits. They're not particularly special in terms of composition, not even light actually, but they are simply the work or the interest of an inquisitive mind. And this book arrives in my consciousness at a time when at the wedding I was asked to do a number of single portraits, which is sort of new for me, in that usually I'd much prefer to be left to my own devices, really, to be making the documentary portraits, the photojournalist at a wedding act. And really, I'm not fussed about doing too many formals. I'll do them, and that I think they are a documentary of the event as well. But single portraits, it's never really occurred to me to make single portraits of people. The only time it really does occur to me is when somebody phones me up and says something like, well, great Auntie Doris has unfortunately passed. Do you have any more pictures of great Auntie Doris? And the answer will invariably be no, because the images that are left that they have, they're the ones that I've sorted, and they're the only ones that remain. So, look, it shouldn't become this sort of Grim Reaper-like activity where I fire around all the slightly older relatives at a wedding making single portraits just in case someday somebody will want a testimonial picture. No, but it has reminded me the power of Paul Strand's portraits of very ordinary people, really, some of them, have reminded me of how precious and how fantastic it is sometimes to just ask somebody, look, can I make your portrait? And it's something I just have not done at events before, and I'm certainly inspired to do it through being asked at this wedding quite a few times by people that were there, and also this book by Paul Strand. So isn't it funny, there's those sort of two events, the wedding where I was asked over and over to make single portraits of people, and equally this book by Paul Strand. There's a reason things happen at the same time. What's it called? Is it synchronicity? Synchronicity? There's another word, isn't there? Right. Here is one from a good friend of the show, Lynn Fraser. Hello, Neil. When I was in Shetland last month, I actually had a Friday free to do a photo walk. How decadent. I decided that I'd take a trip out to Moosa. It's good when you give me the pronunciations, because I think I might have got Moosa, or do you think I might have said Mousa? Well, it's Moosa, which is a small island off the east coast of the south of mainland Shetland. Already sounds wonderful. Its name means Moss Island in Old Norse and has been uninhabited since the 19th century. Oh, another reason for me to want to go there, Lynn. Uninhabited, that is photography, the Friday photo walk and photography, gold for me. All that island, just me, on my Todd, talking into a microphone, sharing time with you, the idea of the Friday photo walk. It's best known for its fabulous upstanding broch, an Iron Age stone roundhouse that resembles a cooling tower, which is the best preserved example of its type. It somehow avoided the fate that befell most prehistoric stone buildings and cairns, which were robbed out to build later houses and walls. That's such a shame. Who was it that was doing that? Is it Jim Sollows? I've got a Jim mention to come actually shortly, but I'm sure it's Jim. It is you, isn't it, that's doing that project now, where you go and photograph buildings before they're ripped down and modern ones are put up in their place. It is you, isn't it? Yes, it is. I thought I would listen to the Friday photo walk, says Lynn, as I wandered around the island, but realised I'd left my earphones at the hotel as I boarded the boat. So I listened to the birds rather than your dulcet tones during my 3-hour preambulation. Like that word, will be stealing that to use myself. It was maybe just as well, as it meant I could hear the bonkses and Arctic terns coming in to dive bomb me. Oh, do you know, dive bombing birds are no joke. I may have mentioned this before. You probably have, Neil. Well, let me mention it again, just in case you didn't hear. The dive bombing gulls and Cockatoo Island in Sydney. Oh, I miss that place. I'm so looking forward to going back one day. Not necessarily to Cockatoo Island, though that is very interesting. I made a YouTube video that featured Cockatoo Island and the birds that made a lot of noise. They followed me round, they did. And then they took their moment when I was singled out on my Todd. And they dive bombed me. I was near nesting areas apparently, but I didn't think I was that close. But they certainly thought, well, they certainly considered I was too close. Had a proper go at me. It's not fun, is it? No, it's not, Lynn. Every time I mention Sydney, by the way, I want to prefix it with P. Sherman, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney. Cheap movie reference for you there. Anyway, attached to some of the images I took as I wandered, all the best from Lynn. They will be on the show page, and I'm seriously thinking that really Scotland will be a super place for the retreat in the new year. The Photowalk retreat that I've started to talk to you about. Yeah, I think that the first photography daily retreat is likely to be the new year. Keep that loosely pencil marked in your diary, please. Not quite sure when. Just take the whole of January out, or February, maybe both. But there are a few ideas. Shh, Neil, don't say too much. I won't. But I am looking forward to it already, with a bit of veiled excitement. Am I holding it back enough? I think I'm going to call this picture something like the old and new, or the new and old. I've got this lovely old, I think it's a Victorian bridge in the background with Leeds Cathedral, and then all these brand new office and apartment blocks, and the reflection of the canal with the traffic going over it. What are we at? Shutter speed 1250 f4, ISO 160. I've got the as Finn Beals would call it, the dirty foreground. There we go. I have a bridge in the foreground and a bridge in the background, and somebody making a lot of noise in the background. Edmund Terakopian Pt.2, the final part in a moment. Here's one from Nick Lewis. Thanks, Neil, for keeping me sane over the past year. Glad to hear that you're taking a break and the business is recovering for you. Planning my own blog and photography adventures for the future. Remember, sound is as beautiful as any image. You don't need to tell me that. It was short and sweet. Thank you, Nick. Yes, we are back from our break, and I concur, sir, with the sound comment. It seems to be a comment received so often about this here show that you feel you're on the walk. Frankly, I do wish sometimes the birds would be louder. See, no birds. Come on, birds, where are you? I can see you. You're flying in the air. Anyway, yeah, I do wish they would be louder, but not the planes. They drive me nuts. So Mike Schofield, a couple of weeks ago, you're DM'd to me about taking a photo walk with you at Duxford Air Show. Whilst you know I like Duxford Air Show, and I've talked about it on the show a good few times, I'm sure, I'd love the picture making, for sure, but you'd find me a gibbering wreck by the end of it when it came to the sound. I've got to redo that bit. Oh, and that bit. Unless it was the Merlin engine. I mentioned the Merlin, didn't I, a few weeks back? But yeah, you'd have an. If it was up to me and we were doing a photo walk at an air show, the Merlin engine. Oh, that was a wonderful sounding. That was in the Spitfire, wasn't it? I think it was later on. It was put into a Mustang as well. Was it a Mustang or Corsair? It definitely was in a car. I can't believe they put one of those Merlin engines that fired up the Spitfires. I can't believe that they used to be in cars, but apparently they were. And I know that because a bride told me that, because her grandfather was a test pilot for Rolls-Royce. These are the circles I'm moving in. Anyway, before Edmund then, and I will come back for the story about Mum's ashes and a trip to IKEA. I haven't forgotten. I'll do that by the end of the show. Just before Edmund then, hello Neil, in a recent episode you mentioned something that really piqued my interest. You mentioned the idea of being able to integrate audio with a still photograph. Would you be willing to elaborate on how that's done? Sounds very cool. I'm not that interested in shooting video, but being able to somehow add audio to a still image sounds... You're going to use the A word. Are you licensed for this word, Jim? Awesome. Jim, the power of the ocean is awesome. The moon being able to change the tides of that ocean is awesome. You know what I'm going to say next. Justin Bieber's haircut is not awesome, but actually sound can be awesome. So maybe I'll let you have it with a lowercase a. Jim Solos. So I mentioned that we'd at least mention Jim's name, didn't I? We have. Jim. Yeah, well, the photo film is the obvious. I'm sure you must have heard me talking about photo films, Jim, which is where I make a film. It's on a timeline, but there's no movie in it as such. There's no moving images. It's just still images on the picture timeline, and on the sound part of it, it's parts taken from speeches or personal comment, documentary comment, perhaps. It can be anything. It could just be. I mean, if you wanted to make photographs of the ocean, which is awesome, especially when it's powerful, Jim, then you could, couldn't you? You could just record that ocean and mix it with the pictures, and then you have this soundscape, if you like. And I've mentioned that I've had this idea of doing a portrait exhibition where some headphones hang below each of the frames. And this is my Face for Radio exhibition, where I photograph familiar and famous broadcasters, radio broadcasters in the UK. And when you look at their picture, if you pick up the headphones, you can actually hear them talk. One step further, of course, will be the Harry Potter type video thing where they're moving and talking in the frame. But that's not what we're talking about here, is it, Jim? Because you don't want to do that sort of thing. So that would work. And don't forget Robert Gumpert. His extraordinary work that he did in the American jails, where he made these really powerful portraits with inmates, and spent some time with each of them in an ante-room, and would turn a tape recorder on and record them. And then when you look at the pictures on Robert's site, you can press the play button underneath the pictures and hear what they have to say about the crimes they've done or the times they're serving or family. Some of it was very personal, and I was greatly moved by the work. Robert's going to be on again soon, because he's been doing another project with the homeless, and he's pretty much good to go on that with an interview. And in my new blog, I know, the blog of the website that I always seem to eternally be getting around to doing, but winter is coming soon, and I do have the excuse that in the if it's not famine, it's feast. If it's not feast, it's famine. It seems to be the way in my sort of world, or has been certainly during the COVID crisis. But when we get back into winter, yes, I've started working on my website, and I certainly intend that viewers will be able to hear the sound whilst reading the words and looking through the pictures. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to be listening to lots of, in my case, doing, weddings. I don't want them to be listening to lots of wedding speeches necessarily, unless it's a formal kind of photo film where I put the whole piece together. But certainly, if it's, if you listen right now, I'll go quiet for a second. And I bet you that wood pigeon that's been singing beautifully just for a moment, it's going to go quiet as well. You can hear the aeroplane. Yeah, there's a few sounds in the background of traffic, and there's a meadow to my right now. So look, if you could hear where you are when you're reading a blog, and particularly with your project, Jim, about the old houses that you're shooting, I think that would be fascinating, don't you? And as far as equipment goes, well, make it really simple. I use, as you know now, the iPhone 8 Plus for recording this. Right now I'm talking into an 8 Plus. I have had nice expensive Sennheiser shotgun microphones, and I have gone out looking like I'm recording Foley for an action movie, but I very quickly found that if I wanted to meld in a little bit more, that actually speaking into a phone wasn't a bad idea, because people would stop asking me what I was doing so much with this fancy microphone with a boom and stuff, and I could just walk on by. I've been doing it to an extent with this walk as well. The only thing that makes my phone look a bit odd is the fact that I put a dead cat on the top, which is this fluffy thing that goes around the top of the iPhone where you have the microphone pickups. It prevents this sort of wind noise. You can't always stop it, particularly last week when I was photo walking on the top of that cliff. There were a few moments where I think you could very, very clearly hear that it was quite windy. But keep the microphone really simple. It does not need to be complicated in the slightest. Zoom H1's fabulous microphone. Put a little dead cat on that. You can take that out and about with you. H6, H4. They now do some really good filled microphones. The F1, the F2. So and if you really want to spend some money, then you can look at some of the really fancy, and they are called field recorders. and you can see some beautiful kit that you can carry around with you. And I have from time to time thought, you know what, that's going to be my Photowalk present one day. But at the moment, no, I'm quite happy using my setup that I've got, and it is mono, but it works. So let's listen to part 2 of my conversation with Edmund Terakopian, who I elected to kick off this new format of the show, which has a slightly new ending today, which I'm experimenting with to a degree. A kind of here's how I'm feeling segment at the end of the show. But Edmund, yes, a joy to talk with Edmund as always, and I hope he won't mind. He can tell me off when we meet next, and I won't mind at all. But he did send me a DM, which I want to share with you after you've heard part 2 of our chat. Today we're talking absolute passion in making pictures. We talk about shooting video with your stills camera. We talk about shooting to your style, what you enjoy, and not being a slave to what other people want you to do. And we also talk about those that he's been mentoring and how buoyed he is by those coming through. So lots to talk about today with Edmund Terakopian, part 2.
Well, I look at your work, where you've come from, what you've done, the situations you've photographed. 7/7, of course, being one that plays an important tone in your portfolio, actually. But I know, and you mentioned in our Facebook group the other day for the program, that you will shoot a wedding or 2 if you need to. You'll photograph an event. It does raise the question, as photographers, are we now entering a period where we need to look outside our understood or our familiar genres and be prepared to roll up our sleeves and get involved in stuff we haven't before?
It's a good question. There's a few thoughts I have for that. I would never, unless I was literally starving, I would never do any genre of photography that I don't want to do passionately.
Yeah.
That's one important thing. And I never want photography to become a job for me, as in a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
I've seen colleagues who are 9-to-5 photographers. If it's, 10 minutes past 5 o'clock when they've put their cameras in their bag and Big Ben topples out of St. Elizabeth's Tower and bounces across the river, they wouldn't take a picture of it because, I finished my job at 5. Yeah. I don't ever want to have that. And I think, getting into photography that you don't thoroughly enjoy and you sort of, end up unraveling that maybe you have a gift for, I think it has a danger of that. The only thing in my career which made me step out of a comfort zone and start to really look at a totally different line of visual work was video. Because for years and years, I was rejecting doing video. This is before DSLR started shooting video. When I was at the Press Association around that time, some of the photographers were being issued little Steadicam type cameras, which had an entire bag full of its own kit and its own batteries and silly little DV tapes and all that kind of stuff. But I refused it because shooting video is a totally different mindset. I mean, forget the equipment, but it's a totally different mindset. And when Canon came out with the 5D Mark II, it was the first time that a video camera that was accessible by us could shoot video that had soul, that had emotion, that had a feel. And the funny thing is, Canon invited a group of press photographers from the UK to a London pre-launch of the 5D Mark II, and it was a sort of a closed room and nibbles and drinks and speeches and so on. And they had a plasma screen sort of playing a bit of video that someone had shot, taken at noon of cars on a road, and it was horrible. It was shot at f/22 and blah, blah, blah. And, we all laughed and said, what are you doing putting a video thing on a proper camera? You're crazy. This should be on a sure shot. And that's all. Until a couple of weekends later, Vincent Laforet released Reverie.
I remember it. Yeah.
Oh my God, it was unbelievable. You could create a visual that had feel, that had mood, that had, levels to it.
Well, I remember speaking to him actually, Edmund, and he said he almost didn't get the camera because it had been promised to somebody else that weekend.
Well, actually what had happened, I know Vincent quite well. What had happened was he turned up to Canon HQ just for a regular meeting about his sort of, ambassadorial role or explorer of light role. Yeah. And he'd seen a truck unloading white boxes. And white boxes means pre-production.
Yes,
new. And, of course, having an NDM being Vincent, he pushed and he pushed and he pushed. And eventually the guy at Canon relented and said, well, it's the new 5D. And he was, oh, well, being a New Yorker and a photojournalist on top of that, and being Vincent Laforet, he pushed again. And the second he saw the video capability, he managed to get the guy to lend him a camera for that weekend. And he went and hired a helicopter from his own money. And,
that's amazing.
And got a couple of actors in and shot this amazing, amazing visually, story-wise. You didn't have time to come up with a proper narrative, but, it was a cute enough narrative of a couple in love. And he shot this amazing thing which changed the world of video. This is the thing. Canon didn't realize what they'd made. It was just kind of a, sketchbook video thing. Whereas Vincent sort of realized, if you unlock the lens, it'll open up wide and, you can stick on a neutral density and shoot at 1.2 and start to use available light properly. And he changed the world. I mean, Canon didn't realize what they'd invented. This was the funniest thing until Vincent did his video, and then literally everything changed. So that was the only time I went off on a tangent, which I didn't feel was an organic part of me. But as soon as I started exploring it, I realized that I really enjoy telling stories visually in a moving way with audio, which was another sort of mind-blowing discovery of how much different layers of audio can bring, if done properly, to a moving image. So, but apart from that, I would never rebrand myself as a professional, for example, food photographer or something.
Although, hang on a minute, you won the Pink Lady Food Photographer of the Year awards. Well, you came third, which in my book, that's winning. A super Covent Garden shot that at first glance doesn't necessarily say food, does it?
Well, that's the thing. It's a journalistic picture, isn't it? It's not. But what I'm talking about is that kind of highly stylized and beautifully lit kind of stuff. Yeah. But having said that, we always, as photographers, I'm going to say styles change, but I don't mean style in a very conscious way. Nick Turpin, a press photographer colleague from years and years ago, who's now an amazing commercial and street photographer, once said to me, style isn't real if it's something you're conscious of. And I think we had this conversation when I was still a teenager, or early 20s. And it was such a deep thing to think about. And it's so true. If you're conscious about a style, if I have a client that says, we want you to shoot it in this style, I kind of tell them, look, I shoot things the way I shoot things. Yeah. It's a natural way of working. I don't mimic other people. And it's so true. But our styles change, our things change. And something that's changed for me over the last year and a half, and it's absolutely lockdown led, is that I've sort of found a new hobby in fountain pens, weirdly enough. I've always loved writing with fountain pens from the days of school. And I still have, I've had a fountain pen throughout. I really enjoy writing with it. And, if I'm sort of putting together expenses or something, or timesheets or whatever, this is the pen I use. But for some reason, through boredom of lockdown, I kind of started looking into it and discovered this whole world of amazing pens and so on. And I started getting into that. And then I started getting into fountain pen photography, which sounds a really weird thing to get into.
That's a subgenre all of its own.
It's a complete subgenre, but it is, product photography. It's still life. And, I've started an Instagram called Fountain Pen Scribbles.
I didn't know about this one. Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of macro photography, sometimes with available light, but often very sort of lit situations with, multiple lights and reflectors and this and that. And it's kind of been a really good creative outlet through the frustration of not having, not being able to work the way I want to.
Well, I'm going to do that thing which I don't usually sort of draw attention to as I'm doing an interview, but I want to look this up as we're talking about it. Fountain Pen Scribbles.
No full stops. It's on Instagram.
And it's all one word. Fountain Pen Scribbles, all one word.
Exactly, yeah.
There we go. Found it straight away.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It's a bit different, isn't it?
Well, apart from that, it's got your name at the top. I would not have associated you with this immediately.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So, I think it's interesting if we organically find new kind of things that we want to dip our toes into. And of course, weirdly, this thing has come about from, the more corporate work or the high-end fashion, high-end news portraiture work where, I would use lighting and softboxes and reflectors and umbrellas and this and that to craft a picture. And it's that skill set just shrunk into macro mode and done with, nibs and pens. And
I think I've just seen the one that my father used to write with. And when you mention expenses, he used to save his fountain pen for some reason for returning the VAT form. I've no idea why. Before we go down that road, because we could, you mentioned Nick Turpin. Actually, this is a good opportunity to mention street, because your street work's superb. And of course, it's become a popular subculture. What does the term street mean to you, though?
I mean, to me, street photography is daily life photographed journalistically, i.e. not tampered with, not posed up, not set up.
Yeah.
It's things that happen for real through day-to-day living, and it's finding interesting moments within what is usually actually mundane things. And it's that sort of interesting juxtaposition, interesting millisecond, interesting light. It's all of these things that come together very, very quickly, very, very briefly, and they culminate in an interesting moment within daily life. That to me is street photography. I mean, I see people who are getting into it who'll just photograph some awkward person that they managed to take a snap of and call it street photography because it's some person in the street. It's not that, it could be light flashing off a shop window and catching something very interesting. That's street photography. And it's just waiting for those interesting moments and interesting, people crossing over in a right way, or walking into a light in a right way, or casting a shadow in a right way. That's what street photography is to me.
I've heard people say that it's a bit like fishing. You can go out for hours and come back with absolutely nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I use that terminology myself as well when I'm teaching workshops. And this is what makes it interesting. There's no guarantees.
No.
You could have everything ready. You're in the right mental space. Your camera's charged up. You've got a nice empty memory card. Everything's good to go, and the light's right and the weather's good, but you just don't come back with anything special. And then other times when you're in a rush, running through the rain to get to the car park, and it's absolutely heaving and the light is terrible, you see a moment. And that's when you have to stop.
Well, I'm led to remember your picture of which we've talked about before, the rain with the sign, with the illumination, just at the right moment.
Yeah, love your job. Yeah,
love your job.
That's one of those moments. Yeah. One thing I learned through many mistakes and making the same mistake over and over again is if you spot, it doesn't matter how much of a rush you're in, if you spot a picture, you have to take it, you have to stop and go and shoot it. And by spot a picture, I'm talking mainly about the light, because that light will never be the same again. You could go back the next day at exactly the same time, or go back 12 months from now at exactly the same time. It just won't be the same. And that's part of, what makes street photography great, is this kind of thing about always having a camera with you, always observing, always looking, and being able to, make a picture that might present itself very, very briefly.
ICM appeared in my vocabulary recently, intentional camera movement pictures, and we've talked about them on the show. And it seems that these are a way to hide the faces of the innocent, if you want, from want of a much better description. But in some European countries, it seems the only way now to shoot street, replacing seeing faces with this sort of fuzz. Do you fear it going the same way in the UK?
God, I hope not. I mean, movements are strong. It's a strong creative choice.
So I've seen some incredible stuff, but I do get afraid when I hear from people saying, well, it seems to be the only way I can shoot now and present it.
Like anything, if it's overdone, it starts to kill the picture and kill the genre. If something's done with very deliberate reasons because it adds to the image, that's great.
Yeah.
Hungary, it's illegal to take pictures without asking permission first.
Yeah.
In France, you can't publish a picture without having written permission. You can still shoot it, you can't publish it, unless you can argue that it's for the public interest, which is how newspaper photographers can still photograph politicians without getting them to sign sort of release forms and so on. So, there are, I can't think of anywhere else. I mean, barring, probably North Korea, I guess. Even in Iran, you have great street photographers sharing work. One thing we all have to realize is that documenting daily life, we're not doing anything wrong. It's not illegal. It's not doing something wrong, to use the term used, to protect the innocent. Well, it's not like we're doing anything malicious to anyone who's doing anything wrong. It's just a nice moment of what happened. And if you look at the work of the Turnley brothers, for example, in when they do sort of street work in Paris, it's current stuff, and it's clearly street photography. It's not posed up and set up and then, permission granted and then shot. But they've clearly, obviously, after the fact, gone and had a chat and got some details and, got the person to sign a model release and probably offered them to send them a picture or something. And people generally like it. I can only ever remember one person reacting badly, and that was during a workshop. And she started to have a real go at my student. And this is after doing, many, many workshops and many, many years of street photography. I've never had a problem. In some situations where I've really spotted that this picture's quite important, I've gone up, found the person, started chatting with them, explained what I've done, and I've never had a bad reaction to that. And it is all in our mindset. If we fidget on the street, if we're hiding, if we feel like we're doing something wrong, people's animal senses pick that up.
Yes.
At the end of the day, we still have this predator, be wary kind of survival instinct deeply, deeply ingrained within us. So if you see someone, constantly being dodgy and nipping in and out from behind a pillar or something like that, you automatically pick them up. Yeah. And of course, then when you see the camera, then you're already in a negative space even before you see that camera. And then that goes down a negative spiral. But if someone looks comfortable and is smiling and is making eye contact after having taken a picture and so on, it's not a problem.
You remind me so much of something that a wildlife photographer said to me once at a wedding. Said, "You don't spook the animals, and that's why you get the pictures." I suppose it's exactly a similar thing, isn't it, Ree? You don't spook the people you're making the photos of, and they won't mind.
Yeah, exactly. And in a wedding scenario, I really love handing over the book to the couple myself.
Yeah.
I don't send it by courier when it's possible, because I love to see their reaction when they're going through. And pretty much universally, I always get words to this effect of, "We didn't even realize you'd taken that. Oh, we didn't even know you were here for that. Oh, we didn't even know this," And that's wonderful, because you don't spook people. You're gentle, you move gently, you sort of mingle. You don't, you're not rushing around elbowing people out the way and, posing stuff up and all the rest of it. And people just forget you're there. And that's when the real magical pictures start to come together, because they're real, they're real moments. This then means that they'll be cherished for decades.
Well, you mentioned students, and just finally, I want to talk about your mentoring and your workshops, which are an important outlet for you. Are you excited generally by what you see coming out, the people that you meet and the people that you mentor?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I've had a few of my, let's not call them students, clients. I don't know what the right word is. Workshop attendees, delegates.
We're going to have to find a photographic term for them.
Yeah. Some of which are actually, definitely friends now.
Yeah.
But I'm very proud. There's I've had quite a few of my workshop clients, become serious photographers and really devote themselves to making really, really good work. Great exhibitions, great stuff that's been published. One became a professional photographer, sort of mid-career change from his previous sort of career, and that's great. This is what I love about teaching, is to see someone all of a sudden get it, and that sparkle starts to come, and then that you've now encouraged them down this avenue that's going to produce much, much joy. This is what I love about teaching is those moments when what you're saying all of a sudden clicks into place. And quite often I'll have people sort of getting in touch the next day and saying, "Now I get it," because there's so much information that kind of is bits of abstract, and then like a jigsaw, all of a sudden when they click together, then it makes absolute sense. Then you really grasp it. So things like that I love. Which is why I do workshops, I do talks and so on. It's not something that I got into because I needed to expand to make money or anything like that. It's something I decided to do because I really enjoyed seeing the fruits of the labor, if you like.
What a joy. Second part, Edmund Terakopian My thanks. And I thought, very inspirational this week indeed. And it won't be the last time you hear his voice on the show, not unless he's particularly unhappy about me sharing our private message. Edmund, switch off now, sir. I know you're busy. There must be something you absolutely need to do. Has he gone? Is Edmund gone? Yes. I like the idea that I share stuff with you, so let me just share the message. I wrote to tell him when I was editing it, and I was genuine about this. Sometimes, you know, you're editing something and you think, oh, I'm really pleased with this. They sound fantastic, and so I wrote to tell him that, really. And I thought we'd had our most relaxed convo yet, and he wrote back to say, "You're most kind. You've a great interview style, second only to Becky Anderson on a CNN interview I did many years ago." And he's right. And I love that, because Becky is an incredible journalist and anchor. And the same age as me, though she looks a good deal younger. There's something obviously very good in this CNN water cooler, I think. I couldn't find Becky's interview with Edmund, but I'm sure it was very good. Though probably not quite as wrong and unreal as her chat with Borat. Moving on. Well, talking of wrong, though, while I'm walking a quieter part of this route, pictures on the show page today, I want to end with my story of Mum and the IKEA incident. And I should start out by saying that in her life, Mum she wasn't exactly anti-IKEA. I mean, there's not much to get really angry about when it comes to just, you know, flat pack heaven and meatballs in Swedish gravy. But she wasn't really a fan. And it was, do you know, with some people, it's just one of those things, isn't it? And with Mum, it was really just one of those things. But when she passed, which was obviously sad, it was about a week or two later, and I had the opportunity to go back to, because she lived in Hertfordshire and I live in Berkshire, and the two locations are they're about an hour and a half if the M25 is behaving itself. Those that know the M25 motorway that routes itself around London will be very familiar with how much of a car park that can be on occasion. But I went round to I got the call from the funeral directors to go collect the ashes, which I did. I went up to collect the ashes from Hertfordshire, and on my way back, Sam, my wife, called me in the car and said, "Any chance you could pop into IKEA, because we didn't, at that stage anyway, we didn't have an IKEA in Berkshire." And she said, I can't remember what she wanted actually. "Could you get X, Y, and Z?" I said, "Yeah, no worries at all. There's one in Enfield, just around the way. So I'll reroute, as they say, and I'll just pop by IKEA," which I did. But when I parked up in IKEA, I parked up with I had a Volvo at the time, a Volvo Estate. Very sensible, Neil. I like to think so. And I parked up, and Mum's ashes were sitting in an urn, which was within a polystyrene box. And I looked at this box on the passenger seat, and I thought, do you know what? This is going to be that day when somebody's just passing by the car in the car park or something, and they're going to look into the window and think, "Yeah, what have you got in there? What sort of electronic wonder? What thing that's worth a load of money have you got in there that I could pinch from you?" Smash the window and run off with my mum. I thought, I'm not having that. So I took Mum into IKEA with me, and as I got a trolley, and I put the polystyrene box with Mum's urn inside. I put it in the child seat, as you do, and we went walking into IKEA to go and get the XYZ that I'd been sent in to get. But as I was walking around, it occurred to me that in her entire life, Mum had always said, "I'm not going to IKEA," and here she was with me that day, my last outing with Mum. I mean, it would have been a photo project, wouldn't it? My last outing with Mum was going to IKEA, although she would never have known it. I'm sure I can't remember exactly, but I've embellished the story a bit here and there, I'm sure. But when we got to the checkout, I've got a feeling that the person that was serving me checked everything through. Beep, beep, beep. You know, £1,500 worth of 50p items, and then looked at the polystyrene in that kind of, is that sold by us? I don't think so. There we go. My IKEA story with Mum. God bless you, Mum. I'm sorry I took you to IKEA. Oh, it's all right, son. It's not so bad after all, is it? Did you have your Swedish meatballs? Actually, yes, I did, with you sat next to me. I'll come back to tell you what's on next week's show in a moment, but I want to try something. Just try something from the wonderful artlist.io catalogue of music that we've been using since the outset for this show. You know that I'm very fond of Artlist and the music that they have. We have a link for it. Slight commercial moment. We have a link for it. If you like the music that you hear and you make films or slideshows and you want to have one license that covers you for the entire year, no matter how much music you use, the Artlist link is at the top of the website on photographydaily.show. And do you know, I often listen to many of the vocalists that are on Artlist, and I never really share them with you because we only ever hear the instrumental mixes, don't we? So I want to start to share some of them with you because there's some fabulous talent on there. And sometimes it just, it's perfect mood music for photo walking. It really is. So I'm going to start sharing them with you just at the end of the show. And I'm going to call them, unless I find a better term, a better phrase, I'm going to call it our boot full of tunes. Boot because, at the start of every show I say, walking boots on. Boot full of tunes, as opposed to the Smiths' hat full of hollow. And who knows, now and then we may have a special that features our bootful. And they're beautiful songs if you come from Norfolk, yes. If it's an idea that works out, we may well do that. So from me here on the Trans-Pennine Trail, I'm going to play us out as we walk together with Toasting All My Life, a song by Deuce Williams. And I'll come back to tell you who's on the show next week in a moment. Here's Deuce Williams.
Woke up this morning with the sunrise in my eyes, just like a new day, a breath of fresh air in my life. I don't know how, don't know why, but I'll be toasting all my life. My boots and briefcase are waiting at the door. My ride sweeter to meet the one I love. I don't know how and don't know why, but I'll be toasting all my life. Oh, it's sweeter the first time around.
Deuce Williams. So that's it for today. Keep sending any photo questions and stories that you have that you think may be a good talking point so we can inspire a community of photographers across this globe to studio@photographydaily.show. That's studio@photographydaily.show. Also send in pictures from your own photo walks to appear on the episode's show page online with links to your website or Instagram on Wednesday, the first of our occasional midweek specials. Nikki Heppenstall, co-founder of Remember My Baby, is here. It's a registered charity created to provide portraiture to bereaved parents in hospital on a voluntary basis free of charge. It's a moving story, but equally an appeal to you as a photographer to see how you may feel about making pictures that are precious to parents in their hour of real need. And this is, of course, a UK charity I'm talking about, but other organisations like this exist around the world. And on Friday, we're back for the Photo Walk with more of your letters and a special guest. If you haven't yet, join our private Facebook group and follow us on Instagram. Links to all this and our guests and our wonderful supporters on Patreon will be on the Photography Daily show page today, linked to in your podcast player app as always. Music on the show from the incredible artslist.io, and I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you and talking with you next time.
Photography Daily is a Loading Zone production.